Hello, my wonderful viewer. Welcome to my live stream. If you are a new subscriber, you are welcome. And if you are a returning subscriber, I love you. So let's dive into the video. In a desperate bid to escape the pain of a childless marriage, Kunle pushes away the woman he loves, only to realize too late that he was the one who could never father a child. 4 years ago, Kunle was a different man. He was full of life, a hard-working businessman with an adoring wife, Aisha, by his side. They lived in a modest yet comfortable home where love seemed to blossom in every corner. But fate had something cruel in store for Kunle. One fateful evening, while driving back home from a business trip, Kunle was involved in a car accident that changed his life forever. Though he survived, he was left with severe internal injury, one of which affected his ability to father children, a fact he didn't realize until years later. At first, Kunle and Aisha continued with life as usual, thankful that Kunle had survived the accident. However, as the months turned into years and Aisha remained childless, Kunle's frustrations began to build. They had been married for nearly 6 years and everyone around them started asking the inevitable question, when will you have children? Kunle had always dreamt of being a father, passing on his name and building a legacy with each passing year. His disappointment festered and he began to silently blame Aisha for their childlessness. Aisha, a kind-hearted woman with deep faith, remained patient. She loved Kunle and believed that in time they would have their own child. She tried to console Kunle, suggesting they see a doctor together, but Kunle refused. He dismissed the idea with a wave of his hand, insisting that he was perfectly healthy. He was convinced that the problem lay with Aisha, and he began to distance himself from her emotionally. The tension in their home grew unbearable. Kunle, once gentle and loving, became harsh and cold. He stopped speaking to Aisha with affection, and their home, once filled with laughter and love, became a place of silence and bitterness. Aisha often cried herself to sleep, wondering what had gone wrong in their marriage. One evening, Kunle came home drunk. He had spent the night at a bar, venting to his friends about his barren wife. He stumbled into their bedroom, reeking of alcohol, and in a fit of rage, he told Aisha he was worthless, that she had failed him as a wife. "I can't keep living life this," he shouted. "What kind of man am I if I can't have children? You are the problem, Aisha. You have made me the laughingstock of our community." As Aisha, heartbroken and trembling, tried to reason with him, but Kunle was beyond reasoning. "I want you out of my house," he said coldly. "I am done with this marriage." Those words shattered Aisha. She had given Kunle everything, her love, her loyalty, her patience, and now he was discarding her like she was nothing. With tears streaming down her face, she packed her things and left the home they had shared for so many years. Kunle watched her go, his heart hardened by anger and pride. It didn't stop her. After Aisha left, Kunle expected to feel relief, but instead he felt a strange emptiness. The silence in the house was now deafening. Days turned into weeks and Kunle found himself missing Aisha's presence. He missed the way she would hug softly while cooking, the way her laughter would fill the room when they shared a joke, but he was too proud to admit it. Instead, he convinced himself that he would find another woman, someone who could give him the children he so desperately wanted. Months passed and Kunle began dating again, but every relationship ended the same way, with no pregnancy. He went from one woman to another, each time growing more frustrated when they didn't conceive. It wasn't until a year after Aisha had left that Kunle finally decided to visit a doctor. His new girlfriend had been pushing for it, tired of his constant blaming and accusation. The visit to the doctor changed Kunle's life. After running several tests, the doctor sat him down and gave him the news. Mr. Kunle, I am sorry to tell you this, but the accident you had 4 years ago caused significant internal damage. You have been impotent since then. Kunle was stunned. What? What are you saying? He stammered. I am saying that you cannot father children. The doctor explained gently. It's a result of the injury you sustained. I am surprised you weren't aware of it earlier. Kunle sat in silence. He smiled, raising. All this time he had blamed Aisha, thinking she was the reason they couldn't have children. But the truth was, it had been him all along. He felt a wave of guilt wash over him as he thought about how he had treated her, how he had driven her away without even considering that he might be the problem. As Kunle left the doctor's office, the weight of his action pressed down on him. He had lost the woman who had loved him unconditionally, all because of his pride and ignorance. Desperate to make things right, Kunle decided to find Aisha. He needed to apologize, to explain everything, and maybe, just maybe, they could start over. But when Kunle found Aisha, he was hit with another shocking revelation. Aisha had remarried. She was now the wife of a kind, loving man named Musa, who treated her with the respect and care she deserved. They had recently welcomed a baby boy, a beautiful, healthy child who bore Musa's name. Kunle stood at a distance watching Aisha with her new family. His heart ached as he saw the joy in her eyes, the way she smiled at her son, and the way Musa gently kissed her forehead. It was a life he had once dreamed of, but now it was no longer his. Kunle wanted to approach her, to beg for her forgiveness, but he knew it was so late. Aisha had moved on and she was happy. She had found the love and fulfillment that he had failed to give her. All Kunle could do was watch from afar, filled with regret for the life he had thrown away. In the years that followed, Kunle remained alone. He never married again, and though he tried to rebuild his life, the pain of losing Aisha never left him. He often thought about that fateful night when he had driven her away, wondering how different things could have been if he had just listened to her, if he had just gone to the doctor sooner. Now Kunle spent his days in quiet reflection, living with the consequences of his action. He had once been a man who let pride and anger dictate his choice, but now he is a man humbled by the weight of his regret, and every time he thinks of Aisha, he is reminded of the love he had and the family he lost. Kunle's story is a lesson in humility. Kunle regrets deepened with each passing year. As he sat alone in his home, memories of his time with Aisha haunted him relentlessly. He remembered how she had stood by his side during the most difficult times, how she had cared for him after the accident, never once complaining. She had been the epitome of a loyal wife, and yet he had treated her so cruelly. His business began to suffer as well. The once thriving company that he had built with determination and hard work started to falter without the stability of his home. Kunle found it hard to focus. His mind was always clouded by thought of Aisha of the family they never had, and of family she now enjoyed and with another man. Kunle began avoiding social events and gatherings, not wanting to be reminded of what he had lost. His friends and colleagues would often talk about their children, sharing stories of milestones, first steps, first word, graduation. It pained him to hear such conversation, and he could make excuse to leave early, unable to bear the sting of his own family future. One day, while sitting in his office, Kunle received a message that could change everything. It was from an old friend who had heard about Aisha's new family. His friend mentioned that Aisha's husband Musa was a businessman and that they had recently moved back to the city where Kunle was. The news hit Kunle like a punch to the gut. Aisha was close by, living her new life just a few miles away, and he hadn't even known. The thought of her being so near, yet so far out of reach, filled him with a longing he hadn't felt in years. Despite his better judgment, Kunle decided to find out more about Aisha's life. He didn't know what he hoped to achieve, but the curiosity, the need to see her again, was overwhelming. Kunle hired a private investigator to discreetly gather information on Aisha and her new family. He wanted to know everything: where they live, what they did, how they spent their time. The investigator returned with detailed reports: pictures of Aisha shopping with her son, playing with him at the park, attending social events with Musa. In every photograph, Aisha looked radiant, her face glowing with the contentment that had once been missing from their marriage. Seeing those pictures was both a comfort and a torment to Kunle. On one hand, he was happy that Aisha had found the happiness she deserved. On the other hand, the sight of her joy was a constant reminder of his own mistake. He had pushed her away, and now another man was reaping the benefits of the love he had so carefully thrown away. Kunle began to fantasize about ways to reset himself into Aisha's life. He thought about reaching out to her, apologizing and explaining that he had discovered the truth about his infertility. But every time he drafted a message or rehearsed what he would say, he stopped himself. He couldn't bear the thought of disrupting her life, of bringing unnecessary pain to the family she had built. Musa and Aisha seemed genuinely happy, and Kunle knew that showing up now after all these years could only cause confusion and hurt. So he remained silent, carrying the burden of his regrets along. One afternoon, as Kunle was sitting in a cafe, lost in thought, he saw someone familiar walking. It was Musa. He was with their young son, who was now around 3 years old. Kunle's heart raced as he watched them interact. Musa was clearly a doting father, lifting the boy into his arm, making him laugh with silly face. The sight made Kunle's chest tighten with sorrow. Unable to control himself, Kunle approached Musa. "Excuse me," he said softly, his voice trembling. Musa looked up silently, surprised by the interruption. "Yes, can I help you?" Kunle felt a wave of guilt wash over him. What was he doing? What right did he have to disrupt this man's day? But before he could stop himself, the words trembled out. "I am Kunle. I used to be married to Aisha." Musa's expression shifted from curiosity to understanding. He had heard about Kunle, of course. Aisha had told him everything, the good and the bad. But Musa didn't seem angry or defensive. Instead, he offered a kind smile. "I see," he said calmly. "Aisha has spoken of you." Kunle swallowed hard, unsure of how to continue. I, I just wanted to say that I am sorry. I know it's too late, but I treated her terribly. I didn't know that I was the reason we couldn't have children. Musa nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. Aisha has forgiven you, Kunle. She's moved on and she's happy now. That's what matters. Kunle felt a lump from his throat. The forgiveness Musa spoke of felt like a gift he didn't deserve. I am glad she's happy, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I just wish I had realized the truth sooner. Musa placed a hand on Kunle's shoulder, a gesture of compassion that Kunle hadn't expected. Life has a way of teaching us lessons, often when we least expect it. Aisha's happiness now is proof that sometimes things work out the way they are meant to, even if the road is painful. Kunle nodded, tears welling in his eyes. He hadn't expected kindness from the man who had taken his place in Aisha's heart. Thank you, he said quietly. Thank you for taking care of her. Musa smiled again, this time with more warmth. She deserved the best and I'm lucky to have her in my life. Kunle left the cafe, feeling a strange mixture of sorrow and peace. He had seen firsthand the love that Aisha now had in his life and why it hurt to know that he would never be a part of it again. He also knew that she was in good hands. Musa was a good man, a man who cherished Aisha and gave her the family she had always dreamt of. In the months that followed, Kunle made peace with his past. He threw himself into his work, trying to rebuild his business and focus on the future rather than dwelling on what could have been. Though the ache of losing Aisha never truly went away, he found solace in knowing that she was happy, even if that happiness was with someone else. Years later, when Kule heard that Aisha and Musa had welcomed a second child, a daughter, this time he smiled to himself. He imagined the joy that must be filling their home, the laughter of children and the love between husband and wife. Kunle knew that he had no place in their world anymore, but he was content with that. He had learned a valuable lesson, a lesson about pride, about love, and about the consequence of our action. Though his own life would never be what he had once imagined, Kunle had found a quiet acceptance. He had let go of the bitterness and anger that had once consumed him, and in its place there was a sense of calm. He had made peace with his mistake, and while he could always carry the regret of losing Aisha, he had finally found the strength to move forward. As time passed, Kunle's life settled into a quiet routine. He had moved to a smaller house, one that suited his now solitary existence. His business, which had faltered during his years of emotional trauma, had started to recover. He had poured his anger into rebuilding it, and while it wasn't as successful as it had once been, it was enough to sustain it comfortably. Work became insolence, a distraction from the thought that still haunted him late at night. But no matter how busy he kept himself, Kunle couldn't entirely escape the memories of Aisha. There were moments, especially in the quiet evenings, when he could think of her and their life together. He thought about he thought about how things could have been different if only he had gone to the doctor sooner, if only he had listened to her, please, and tried to save their marriage. The guilt was always there, a shadow that followed him wherever he went. One day, as Kunle was going through some old files in his office, he, he came across a box of personal items from his marriage to Aisha. Inside were photographs of the two of them in happier times, pictures of vacations they had taken, family gatherings they had attended, and moments of pure joy that now seemed like a lifetime ago. There were also letters, notes they had written to each other during their early years of marriage, full of love and promise for the future. Kunle sat down and sifted through the memories, feeling a deep sense of loss. He had thought he had made peace with his past, but seeing this tangible reminder of what he had thrown away brought everything rushing back. He lingered over one particular photo of Aisha smiling brightly, her eyes full of love. It was taken just before the accident when their future had seemed so full of possibility. As he stared at the photo, Kunle realized that he had spent too long living in the past. While Aisha had moved on and built a new life, he had remained stuck, unable to fully let go. It wasn't just the guilt that held him back, it was the love he had never fully allowed himself to mourn. For the first time in years, Kunle allowed himself to cry. The tears came in a torrent, washing away the years of pent-up emotions he had buried deep inside. He wept for the love he had lost, for the family he would never have, and for the man he had been. Proud, stubborn, and blind to the truth. But as the tears fell, there was also a sense of release. He knew he couldn't change the past, but he could finally start to let go. In the weeks that followed, Kunle made an effort to focus on the present. He started spending more time with friends, reconnecting with people he had pushed away during his darkest years. He had took up new hobbies. He joined a local hiking group, something Aisha had always encouraged him to do, but that he had never found time for. Slowly but surely, Kunle began to rebuild a life that wasn't defined by regret. One evening, as Kunle was closing up his office, he received a phone call that caught him by surprise. It was from Aisha. His heart raced as he answered, unsure of what to expect. He hadn't spoken to her in years, and the least time they had crossed paths was in the cafe where he had briefly met Musa. He had assured he had assumed she had no reason to reach out to him again. Kunle, Aisha's voice was soft, familiar, yet distant. I hope I am not disturbing you. No, not at all, Kunle replied, trying to keep his voice steady. It's good to hear from you. How are you? I am well, thank you, she said, and there was a push. I wanted to talk to you because, well, I thought you should know that Musa and I will be moving abroad soon. He's been offered a job in Canada and we will be leaving in a few months. Kunle felt a pang in his chest, though he couldn't quite understand why Aisha had already moved on, built a new life with Musa, and yet the thought of her leaving the country felt like a final closing of the chapter that had once been there with their life together. I see, Kunle said quietly. That's wonderful. Canada would be a great place to raise your children. Yes, Aisha agreed, her tone thoughtful. It's a good opportunity for us, and we are excited about the future. There was another pause, and Kunle could sense that Aisha had more to say. He waited, unsure of where the conversation was headed. I wanted to thank you, Kunle, Aisha finally said, her voice filled with sincerity. I know things did end well between us, and I know we've both moved on, but I also know that you've changed, and I can see that you've learned from the past. I've forgiven you, and I hope you've forgiven yourself. Kunle's throat tightened, and he struggled to find the words. Aisha, I don't know what to say. I've lived with so much regret. I never meant to hurt you, and I'm sorry for everything. You don't need to apologize anymore, Aisha said gently. We've both grown, and I believe that things work out the way they were meant to. I am happy now, and I want you to be happy too. Kunle closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. Aisha's words were like a balm to his soul, offering him the closure he had long sought but never believed he could receive. Thank you, Aisha, he said softly. That means more to me than you will ever know. They talked for a few more minutes, exchanging well wishes for the future. As they said their final goodbye, Kunle felt a sense of peace wash over him. Aisha had forgiven him, and in doing so, had given him the permission he needed to fully move on with his life. The next few months passed quickly, and Kunle found himself thinking less and less about the past. He focused on his work, his friendship, and the small joy that life had to offer. He still thought of Aisha from time to time, but the memories no longer brought him pain. Instead, they reminded him of the lesson he had learned and the man he had become. Years later, Kunle received a postcard from Canada. It was from Aisha with a picture of her family standing in front of a snow-covered landscape. The children had grown and they all looked happy and healthy. On the back of the postcard, Aisha had written a simple message, wishing you peace and happiness. Away, Aisha. No, Kunle smiled as he looked at the picture, feeling a warmth in his chest. He had finally found peace, and though his life hadn't turned out the way he had once envisioned, he knew that he was exactly where he needed to be. As he placed the postcard on his desk, Kunle looked out the window at the setting sun, feeling a sense of contentment that had eluded him for so long. The chapter with Kunle had finally closed, and with it, the weight of his regret had lifted. Now, Kunle was ready to embrace whatever the future had, knowing that he had learned the most valuable lesson of all, that love, forgiveness, and redemption were always possible, even in the face of the deepest mistake. Thank you so much for watching. I will be coming live again later. So, for now, goodbye, 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 my lovely viewers. Bye.